All right. Kaylee, is it time to get going? That would be great if everyone had their cameras on, just so I don't feel like I'm talking to a blank screen. Okay. Also, so another thing before I just get going, there was a pre-video that I recorded for this, and I'm just wondering if that's supposed to be played or if that's supposed to already have been like viewed by them. Not really sure.
I believe we were supposed to watch it already. I did.
You already watched it?
Yes.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you. So since you're up on the screen, I think that like the last thing that I said was just writing down, talking about that like mindfulness thing. So I'm curious if anybody wrote anything down or kind of participated in the activity and maybe what they came up with, if you have anything. Sounds like no. That's okay. I'm gonna share my screen. Wait for some other stuff. Okay. So today is just going to be kind of a quick presentation over the impacts of social media on relationships and kind of what we're kind of coming to understand and how social media is like moving through our society, especially with younger people. My name is Ben. I am from Oklahoma State University. I'm a first year in the marriage and family therapy program. And then this presentation is co-authored by Jordan Schuler, who's also a student, a master's student in the marriage and family therapy program, and then Dr. Matt Rosie, who is the director of the marriage and family therapy program. Okay, so just starting off, I know this picture looks quite ancient. It looks like it's on ancient technology, but this is just kind of setting the tone and kind of a humorous way. But this says, someone posted, "My teacher is so dumb, he thought the sun was a star," and someone's like, "Yeah, that's because it is," and they say, "No, it's not," blah blah blah, and then dig themselves in a deeper hole by saying that's like saying tomato is a fruit, even though we know from all the debates that a tomato is indeed a fruit. So this is just kind of starting out by saying that a lot of dumb stuff gets posted on all these social media sites, and even this, as you can tell, it's super old. It's still there and we're still seeing it today. Luckily we can't see their last names, so we don't know exactly who they are, but we do know Matthew was not thinking straight whenever he posted this. So social media, it has changed the way we connect with one another. There's no doubt about that. And with that change, and the change in communication that has come with social media, people would sometimes rather, text or snap or DM on one of these social media apps than actually talk face to face. And sometimes because of that, and I think this kind of increased with COVID as well. And I don't know how you all experienced it, but for me, it definitely made social contact feel weird. It felt weird talking to someone face to face rather than texting them or FaceTiming them or being on Zoom, whatever. So sometimes even more in our modern day, social contact can feel a little bit weird. And then we have this aspect of being on our phones and being on social media. There's kind of an aspect of addiction to it, and there's a possibility of it turning into addiction and the difficulty to put the phone down. I kind of talked about it in that first video, but that really straight has to do with the chemicals that go through our brain and that we experience whenever we're on our phones and using social media. And then I'll talk more about this other point too, but checking Instagram to see what other people did today. And it's not even that, it's just checking Instagram to see what's kind of going on in the world in general, or whatever or Twitter or other social media apps. And then, so this kind of final point is that spending too much time on the internet and on social media and on our phones tends to lead to social isolation and depression and other things similar to that. Does anybody have any theories as to why that is?
Well, really, it's because you just see the fake side of everyone on social media, so you don't actually see what's actually happening in their lives, because they just post what's good.
Yeah. Thank you, Abby. That's a really good answer. I think that's a really good reason, because with that, whenever people are posting the kind of the good side of their life, because that's what people deem worth posting, it makes sense. But then we often think, oh, that's their whole life is great, and I'm having a hard time sometimes, and so that just means my life is so much worse, when that's often not the case. Everyone has their things to deal with. Any other reasons why we see the isolation and depression that anybody can think of? Okay, that's fine. Abby, thanks for your answer. I appreciate it. So another reason that we kind of see this too is that we see using, our phone and technology and that to kind of just simply avoid stress, and it's a good way to distract us. And sometimes it's fine. Sometimes it's fine to distract yourself. I think it's a good thing if it calms you down in a short span of time and you're on there for 5-10 minutes. That's fine, whatever. But sometimes it gets to a point where we rely on social media and technology, and it becomes a kind of a crutch, if you will. And so that leads us to spend all our time on our phone to avoid the stress that we're feeling, instead of encountering it in maybe some more positive ways. Okay, so getting into the whole likes thing, and I think this kind of has to do a lot with Abby's point, was that we post the good stuff on our social media so that people will see, and that we're affirmed, and that people are seeing what we are thinking is the good stuff, and people are like, oh yeah, that's awesome, that's cool. And then we're like, oh yeah, it is cool because people liked it. And so we gauge how we feel about ourselves sometimes based on the stats that are on social media, based on the engagement we get with our posts. I know I experience this as well. I do. I'm a little bit better about it now, but whenever I post something, I would constantly go back and forth between whatever I'm doing on my phone and check and see if I got comments, if I got more likes, anything like that. But then comes the question is, what happens when we don't get likes? Are we going to feel okay? What's going to go through our minds? Because in the grand scheme of things, it's probably not a huge deal that you didn't get, likes or a lot of affirmation with the post. But whenever you post it and you're hoping to get a lot of engagement and you don't feel great. It doesn't make you feel great. And that can have a lasting impact, and that can be really difficult. And so it's important to kind of ask, why am I valuing this affirmation? Why am I looking for it? If that's something that's on your mind all the time. And that's kind of utilizing the mindfulness strategies that I talked about in that kind of pre-session video deal, was that being aware of what's going through your mind and the stress that you're feeling and where that's coming from. And if, that's legitimate stress that you can really do anything about, or if it's just something that you can be like, what, it's not that big of a deal, which is easier said than done, but it is worth being aware in that way. Okay. And so this is talking more about relationships with social media. Guess the side over here so I can see. So I don't know if this term is still used. It's pretty old for me, honestly. But there is sometimes with like significant other relationships, there's a pressure to go FBO, Facebook official, basically, publicizing the relationship and making sure everyone knows that you're dating someone and really kind of being proud of that, like you're dating this person, which can be great. But also sometimes if there's kind of a lack of clarity maybe in the relationship, if there's some difficulties in the relationship, there can be some confusion and conflict over it, because sometimes one person may be publicizing the relationship and the other person is like, oh, I'm still kind of in that talking stage or whatever, so I'm not really committed to that, and the other person gets frustrated, and so there can be conflict and confusion about that and like handling the relationship online. You also may feel a sense of rush or social pressure for that person that's still kind of holding back on being really public with the relationship or really trying to post it a lot online. They may feel pressure to do so. They may feel guilt in that they're doing so, even though they're taking the time that they need before engaging in a relationship with a significant other. They may still feel pressure and guilt. And then there's also this aspect of what we call pseudo intimacy, and it's kind of this idea that you're trying to kind of say, we're really close and we get along super well and we have a great relationship, and this is how, like, posting each other and doing that a lot is how, like, our relationship is great and this makes our relationship great, when in fact that kind of stuff doesn't go that far in terms of relationship quality. It can eventually feel sort of empty whenever we're talking about real issues that show up in relationships. And then just with relationships in general, what I was kind of talking about is that potential source of jealousy and anxiety. Jealousy in that you're seeing the positive sides of people's lives and you feel like yours isn't measuring up, and then you get a sense of anxiety from that, of being like, well, crap, now what do I do? I feel like I can't do anything to have as good of a life as that person, but there's still pressure to do so. And then that leads to kind of disconnect in other relationships. If you feel that people are, put on a pedestal and they're way above you, that can be really intimidating to try to communicate with those people if you feel like, they're way above you in some way. Also, okay, this point, return of the ex is just kind of like social media allowed, like whenever you break up with somebody, social media and technology, and whereas before it was kind of like a clean break, people were pretty separated. Social media now allows you to go check your ex's profile and then, text them and DM them or whatever, kind of like their pictures, try to get in their head a bit. So there's that aspect too. Romantic relationships and social media. Another thing with the technology that I think we're seeing more and more often, and my parents did this to me when I was in high school, was tracking me. But we also see that, we see that in friendships and dating relationships where people are tracking each other. And so that, that can be a good or bad thing if people are, just wondering where you're at and they're not trying to kind of watch your every move in a way. That's fine. But I think it does get concerning whenever your significant other or your partner is tracking you and kind of texting you like, why are you there? What are you doing there? Kind of, again, watching your every move. So that is kind of an item for concern. And then it just generally impacts, the self-esteem / self-image with comparing yourself to others and others' relationships. And then, similar to you as an individual with the social media presence, the relationship as well is kind of dependent on that feedback from others. If it's getting positive feedback, positive engagement, you feel good about the relationship. If it's not really getting anything, you may start to question it in some sort of way. So there's also, I don't want to sit here and, be the old man telling you that social media is bad and you should never do it and delete all your apps. That's not what I'm trying to say. I think there's definitely use for social media. I use social media. I don't, I try not to be addicted to it and rely on it, but I do use it. I engage with it because I think it's fun. And I engage with my friends on it a lot. But there's plenty of good things to be said about social media. And first of all, while there is good things, it's also just, it's here, everybody has it. And at some point, it almost becomes a necessity in your life in some ways. But the first thing is it makes new relationships really easily accessible. That's just talking about, friends, maybe if you're in a big school, makes it easy to connect with people you may not meet in your classes or whatever. And you may find out you're going to the same school and you kind of engage with each other online. It's a great way to make friends. Also, just connecting with new communities in general. For me, I've connected with communities online here in Stillwater that, I probably never would have connected with if I didn't have my social media, if I didn't have, my Facebook or my Twitter, blah, blah, blah. So it can be a really useful way of just connecting with people and then eventually, meeting in person and talking in person and hanging out, stuff like that. Yeah, kind of what we were talking about before. It allows you to integrate your social network with significant others. While, what we were talking about before is that it can be, social media can like pose a danger sometimes to relationships. It can also benefit them as well. If you're having fun posting pictures of your significant other with your partner on social media, that's great. And it lets people know that you're dating. Like that's a really easy way to let people know that you're dating somebody. Within relationships, it can also help you practice maintenance techniques. So kind of what we mean by maintenance techniques is this idea of maybe setting boundaries and setting, expectations for how you approach relationships. So kind of this example is like, how fast do you respond to a text? And some people, they get a text and it's depending on who the person that's texting them, but they may like feel the need to respond instantly and they do that. But this in like relationships, you have an opportunity to maybe say, okay, I really want to respond right now, but I don't actually really need to. And it's probably going to benefit me if I, hang out for a second. I put my phone aside. It's not, the end of the world right now. And I can text them back in a bit. And that going forward, if you do that, that kind of sets expectations, that kind of sets your boundaries of being like, yes, I will respond to you, but I don't need to right now. I have, I'm my own person. I have my own time. I can do with it what I want to. And so, yeah, it's just good practice sometimes to slow ourselves down and, be comfortable with ourselves for a second and understand that the person on the other side is going to be okay if I don't text back within 30 seconds. Social media can also obviously be very helpful and informative in learning new things and learning like new places to go and ideas for new hobbies and activities. I know I've really benefited from social media in that way, that I've found I like to camp, and I found a lot of camping sites through that, and a lot of places to just fun places to go, just kind of close to here. There's also this idea with the informative thing of it being a new form of the news and consuming the news. A lot of people, I think, treat it that way. A lot of young people treat it that way, and I don't want to say that's a bad thing. I don't think I think there's good information and bad information and everything in between on social media. It's just really being careful about what you read and not, taking that as like some sort of absolute truth. Really, I think a good way to go about it, if you're using social media as news, if you're reading something, you're watching something, whatever, and it really kind of strikes a chord with you and you feel strongly about it, before you go kind of, basing your actions off that news or that information, maybe go check it, go look online and see if, that news or that information is reliable. That's just a good thing to do. And that's a good way of being careful and kind of protecting yourself against misinformation. Because again, it is out there, but I also think there's, good information on social media as well. And also, last thing, it can just be fun. Like I think that, like what we're talking about before, is that if you have a second and you have free time during the day, I think it can be, a good way to spend, 15 minutes just relaxing and having a good time on your phone, as long as you are having a good time and you're not sitting there comparing yourself and feeling that anxiety that may come. So yeah, it's all about how you use it and who you're connecting with. That's the important part. So this is kind of the social media gone bad. And this is talking about sexting, and kind of, this is obviously like a relatively, I don't want to say new thing, but more of like a modern thing because of phones and because we all have a camera and we all have the ability to send pictures. And so I think, sexting is kind of a natural thing that's happening, but it is something to be careful about. And so the US court system defines it as an act of sending sexually explicit materials through mobile phones. Pretty simple definition. I don't think I really need to explain that. So about a quarter of high school age teens, 14 to 17, and 33% of college age students, 18 to 24, have been involved in a form of nude sexting. So yeah, that's a quarter of high school students whenever these statistics were taken. I'm not exactly sure, to be honest. And then a third of college students. So in regards to sexting, teenagers have few reasons for why they participate in it. And oftentimes it's because they feel a sense of pressure to engage in it, whether that be from just their peers in general or from their partner or whoever they're sending the messages to. But whenever we're talking about this, it's important to consider, who will see that message, who will see that text, because sometimes we don't. Whenever we're texting and we're sending these messages, and I think even with Snapchat too, although it goes away, we don't always have the guarantee that these pictures, they will stay with the person that they were sent to. And so that's something to always, keep in mind with this subject. So this says, well, nearly 70% of teen boys and girls who sex do so with their girlfriend or boyfriend. 61% have sent nude images. Who have sent nude images admit that they are pressured to do it at least once. So, yeah, there's a really, I think, especially with high school aged individuals, there is often pressure involved whenever this kind of communication occurs. And with that, whenever, even when you feel pressure and you kind of succumb to that pressure, it also sometimes forms expectations. And so it's important to be strong in yourself in those situations. If you don't want to send that message and you don't want to engage in that kind of conversation, really being kind of resolute and saying, no, I'm not going to do that. Because if you do, it can form those expectations that it's going to happen again. And if you want to cut it off, it may be even harder in the future. So some more statistics, nearly 40% of all teenagers have posted or sent sexually suggestive messages. So that's quite a bit. And sending semi-nude or nude photos is more common among teen girls. However, it's not a huge difference. It's 22% of teen girls and 18% of same age boys have reported sending images of that nature. Kind of asking the question of why might teens engage in sexting? And I was kind of getting at this, but there's this first idea, and I think this is kind of the major one that I would underline, is that this, I just want him or her, I want them to like me. They're asking for it. And so if I don't give it to them, they're going to cut me off. They're not going to like me. There's also these kind of rationalizations from that point of, it's not that big of a deal. I still had my bra on, I still had some clothes on, blah, blah, blah. And just, kind of, rationalizing the pressure that you feel to do the action. And then again, this is kind of referring to a similar thing, but there's also, this idea, I'm worried that they'll break up with me if I don't. Kind of, and I talk about this more down here, is if you do feel that, and there seems to be a significant lack of choice whenever people feel that way. And so if you do feel that lack of choice, it may be important to consider just the general relationship that you're in with that person and why you don't have a choice. Because you should be able to feel like you have a choice. That should be something that you have a choice to engage in, and you shouldn't feel like that person is controlling you or forcing you in a way to do that. And then also with that, it's just important to, consider before sending, sexual or nude images or text messages to just understand the risks, kind of what we're talking about, that there's no guarantee that that message is going to stay with that person unless, you have a really trusting relationship, but how much can you rely on that trust? It's just important to take into consideration. So, and these are just some red flags, I think, in general about dating and online dating. First one is that someone starts contacting you multiple times a day. Now, this isn't, like your friend that you've known for a long time. This is more referring to just kind of like random people on the internet. If someone is doing that multiple times a day, and especially if you're not responding, that's a big red flag that you probably should keep not responding to that person. They're anxious to move from the dating site to private email messages, texting, or phone calls. That's a red flag because they're using that dating site essentially. If they're refusing to go to those other means of communication, they're using that to kind of hide their identity. So that's a big red flag. They keep asking for personal information, where you work, where you went to school. I think this is kind of obvious why it's a red flag, especially if they don't know you and you only talked online. Yeah, it's not a good idea to give those people your personal information. They agree with everything you say. I think this is a big one. They're constantly affirming you. They're just kind of like a yes man, it seems like, and they're really just trying to get you to like them, basically, and to keep you engaging with them in some way. They become too interested too soon. They keep changing their story. They become demanding, controlling, wanting to know what you've been doing instead of talking to them. I think this kind of goes back to, the tracking thing of this, this idea of control that happens often in online dating. They start adding your friends and family online, really without ever meeting them. That's kind of saying they're trying their best to learn more about you that maybe is information that at that time you don't want them to have. And they ask for personal pictures after providing you with compliments. So they're trying to get pictures, and they're trying to get things that you may not send to just anybody. And so this is kind of the wrap-up slide. This is the last slide. But it's kind of a, what do we do? I've given a lot of, concerns and, positives, negatives of social media, technology, whatever. But, remains the question, what do we do? And there's not an exact prescription as to what to do and how to handle it. But I think something to keep in mind is to always be intentional when you're using social media and technology in general, and ask yourself just every once in a while, why am I posting this? Is it because I want people to think a certain way about me, or am I just doing it for fun and want to engage with my friends? And be critical with yourself in that way, and monitor, what's going through your mind, what you're feeling in your body whenever you're posting on social media. And it's the same thing with consuming content as well. Ask yourself, why am I consuming this right now? Is it just because I need a 15-minute break, or is it because I'm avoiding the stress of, doing homework or other stressful things that we all have to do? And it's important just to remember that, social media is not the end all be all. It's what you make it. And so whatever attention and energy you give social media, that's what is going to be basically kind of given back to you. So it's important to know that you have control over social media. It's a tool for you. It's not supposed to kind of take over your life in any way. And it's important to not let it. And also, it can be good to just take a break sometimes. I take a break every once in a while for a few days. And although like my mind will be a little bit anxious because I don't have that phone to use whenever I want to avoid my anxiety, after a couple days, I get pretty used to it. And whenever I come back, I didn't really miss anything. Yeah, just allowing social media and technology to enhance your life, not diminish it. And being aware that social media has the possibility of diminishing is important so that you can see the signs that, okay, this website, this technology use is not helping me out right now. So it's just good to keep that in mind, and just being mindful, kind of what I was talking about before, monitoring your reactions whenever you're on social media, what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what's going through your head. And so it's just important to keep that in mind going forward. So this is just because we're from OSU, we want to promote, but I'm from the College of Human Sciences with all these majors. I actually did undergrad here as well in human development and family science. If you're looking for a degree here and you're not really sure what to do, I strongly suggest looking into human development family science because I'm biased, but also maybe these other majors as well. Human sciences is a great place at OSU, and this is a contact down here. So yeah, go Pokes, and I appreciate you all listening and your participation. Thank you so much.